Well, all right. We're going to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce to you Rocio Sanchez. Rocio's, hold your applause. I know some of us are eager. I'm pretty eager as well, and I'm a little nervous, to be quite frank. Rocio Sanchez is a Marine Corps veteran and a Cal State San Marcos graduate and current student. She will be singing our nation's anthem this evening. Please join me in a round of applause and welcoming Rocio Sanchez. Thank you. So you can stand wherever you want on the stage. Cal State San Marcos, Army ROTC, are you ready?
Group, halt. Present arms.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Rocio is now going to go back to class after all that. Can you believe it? Thank you again, Rocio and Army ROTC. Thank you, and please give them a round of applause. Could we please dim the lights?
Go right there. 4 feet that way. Right there.
Duty, honor, country. The code which those words perpetuate embraces the highest moral law and will stand the test of any ethics or philosophies ever promoted for the uplift of mankind. Duty, honor, country. Its requirements are for the things that are right, and its restraints are from the things that are wrong. The soldier, above all other men, is required to practice the greatest act, sacrifice.
Oh my God!
In battle and in the face of danger and death, no physical courage and no brute instinct can take the place of duty, honor, country. However horrible the incidents of war may be, the soldier who is called upon to give his life for his country is the noblest development of mankind. Duty, honor, country.
Could we have a moment of silence for those who we have lost to suicide today, and for those who have lost someone to suicide? Thank you. Thank you all for pausing in reflection of those who we've lost to suicide. The video was produced and shared by the American Warrior Association, and thank you, William Spencer, for sharing that with us. It is staggering and concerning to me to think that on average we lose more than 20 veterans to suicide each day, according to the VA. This average is comprised of prior service members, current service members, and inactivated service members. The Department of Defense reported its highest rate of suicides ever recorded in 2018, which consisted of active duty, reserve, and guard service members. Veteran suicides include those who didn't necessarily see combat, serve as infantry, retire, abuse alcohol or drugs, or even live with a mental illness, although some did and some do. Too many suffer alone and in silence, and we're here to say no more. It is reported that out of the 20-plus veterans who die by suicide each day, 6 are engaged in VA healthcare, while less than 11 are not. In San Diego County, we lost 111 veterans to suicide in 2017, according to the California Department of Public Health. So that's one veteran suicide every 3 to 4 days here in our county. That's just local. The report suggests that, I skipped a sentence. The VA has released and restructured their National Veteran Suicide Prevention Annual Report for 2019 to be more reflective of the representation of veteran suicides. And many of you may have seen this report come out in the Military Times on Friday. The report suggests that the average number of veteran suicides for past service members alone is 17 deaths each day, which is 17 too many. I'm filled with hope to see so many of you here this evening. September is National Suicide Awareness Prevention Month. And because suicide is an epidemic among our military and veteran community, and the 10th leading cause of death for all ages, we have invited y'all here to help us build resiliency for our veterans through community and conversations. Together we can and we will be there for our military and veteran community. At this time, we would like to thank and acknowledge our military service members, our veterans, and their family members in attendance this evening. While service members serve, so too do their families. Could all of the current and past service members please stand to be recognized? And could you join me in a round of applause to show our gratitude for these brave women and men and their service and their sacrifices? From the bottom of my heart, thank you for your service and your sacrifice. Now, could all of the service members and veterans' family members, close and extended, please stand to be recognized? Again, please join me in a round of applause to thank them for their service and their sacrifice to this country. Thank you. Welcome to the Power of a Story Forum, co-hosted by Cal State San Marcos, Supervisor Jim Desmond's office with the County of San Diego, and Veteran Crisis Outreach Initiative. We came together to bring y'all together, so thank you for joining us this evening. My name is William Felty, and I'm a post 9/11 Marine Corps veteran, 03 to 07. I will be serving as your forum MC for the evening, and I am a co-founder of Veteran Crisis Outreach with Sarah Carrell. Recently, I completed my master's in social work here at Cal State San Marcos in the MSW program. And I have started a new position in outreach and education with Courage to Call of MHS. I'm a bit more humble than most, so thank you for the applause. I appreciate it, Marilyn. We printed programs for this forum and have made them available to check them out. So please check them out. Now I'm going to go over a few things with you for this evening. So please silence your cell phones and electronic devices and be respectful to others here tonight. Please hold all questions, comments, and other commentary until the end. I'm going to repeat myself. Please hold all comments, questions, and commentary until the end of the program, as time has been set aside for audience Q&A. We appreciate your understanding and cooperation as we take our journey together this evening. Tonight, you will hear from veterans themselves about what it's like to serve in the military and make the transition back to civilian life without the military. These are personal stories from veterans willing to share their experiences, resiliency, and post-traumatic growth by being as vulnerable and authentic as they can be. Their experiences are not a comprehensive representation of the military and/or transition, rather a reflection of what some of our service members go through and continue to live with even after service. Before we get into the program, we need to hear from the County of San Diego and Cal State San Marcos, our co-hosts for the evening, about why they are adamant about addressing the mental health and suicide prevention needs of our veterans that they serve, as well as what services are available. First, I would like to introduce County Supervisor Jim Desmond. Jim Desmond is a Navy veteran and was enlisted during his service. After the Navy, he went to college and spent 33 years as a Delta airline pilot. In 2004, he began a career in elected public service, with 2 years as the City of San Marcos City Council member and 12 years as the mayor. In November of 2018, he was elected as San Diego County Supervisor for the 5th District, which encompasses much of North County. Please join me in a round of applause and welcome Jim Desmond, Supervisor of the County.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Would you like to use this mic?
I don't know. Which mic do you want me to use?
This one's hot, so.
Okay, we'll do this. Well, good evening, everyone. It's great to see such a great group out here at the 6 o'clock on a Monday night. I'm honored to be here and being in front of you. When I was in the Navy almost 40 years ago, it was one of the best experiences of my life, and it really turned me around. Turned me into politics, but it turned me around, and it really was one of the, like I said, it was a really defining moment for me. But I want to thank you, William, for the introduction. I also want to thank from the county here this evening is our county assessor and recorder, Ernie Dronenberg. Where's Ernie? Ernie left. Oh, there you are. Oh, there he is. Okay, there's Ernie Dronenberg is here tonight. And also, give him a hand. There you go. And then the new mayor of San Marcos is Rebecca Jones is here as well. All right. But it's an honor to be here, and I want to thank Cal State San Marcos for hosting us and for everyone who is part of this program and this production of putting on this event here. But we're here tonight because of the brave women and men in attendance, for the folks who signed on the dotted line that they would sacrifice their lives for us. As a Navy veteran, I care deeply about veteran and military community, primarily because of the sacrifices that we and our families willingly chose to make for our country and society. Nearly 1/3 of San Diego County's population is connected somehow with the military. There's over 214,000 military veterans that reside in San Diego County. And those veterans that are amongst us every day, they do not live in a vacuum. They live with us in our communities. And when we need to come together, it's imperative that we support each other, our armed service members and veterans and families. And we've stood idle for too long. We've been afraid to talk about mental health. We've been afraid to talk about the alarming rates of veterans and suicide. And that today is changing. We need to understand that not all wounds are visible. And like William had said, an average of 20 veterans a day take their lives, and we're failing society if we are not taking every action that we can possibly take to prevent this. The suicide rate among veterans is one of the most unreported stories in our country right now, and we need to be talking about it and finding solutions. 50% of veterans who need mental health treatment will never receive that treatment, and that's inadmissible. So as a county supervisor here in North County, represent North County, I'm able to bring communities and people together that can direct action for our veterans. In June, I worked with the county. We're strengthening the community care coordination for participants in the Veterans Moving Forward program. And basically what that is we had veterans over at the Vista Jail. And those veterans, they have their own little cell block that the veterans they work together and try to help each other through what they're going through in the jail. The age was from 17 to 77. Average age about 47 years old. And these are veterans who are incarcerated and probably going to be the next homeless. What we did is we're working with that group, trying to make sure that they have job skills, trying to make sure that they can go out and get a job and get housing, and they don't become homeless. This is one of the efforts we're working on right here in the Vista Jail. Mental health is a top priority in the county, especially when it comes to homelessness. Our resources are and should be spent on those veterans to get them off the streets. There should not be one person, not one military veteran, that's homeless. We've had many we've got many supportive services at the county, behavioral health services, for health and substance abuse issues. They're here tonight. We've got some of the tables in the back, and we have a list of their resources. William had mentioned also 211, the Call for Courage, which is staffed by veterans. It has a 24/7 helpline that helps link current military members and veterans to their families to resources and information. So if you call 211 and ask for the Call to Courage, you'll get a veteran. You'll get a peer online to help you. People experiencing mental health crises can talk to trained counselors that can call the county's crisis line for all mental health resources. We have a network of care website where you can locate mental health care providers, view community calendars of events. We have countywide efforts for suicide prevention, including its Up to Us campaign, Suicide Prevention Council, and a Positive Solutions program that supports senior services as well, or senior citizens. And that's just naming a few. We've got a lot of programs at the county, and if you have any questions on anything, contact my office. I've had people tell me, I'm afraid to call the supervisor, I don't want to bug you. Bug me. If you've got an issue and you need help, give us a call. We are here. I got a staff of people who are just waiting to help people. We got 18,000 people that work at the county. One of them should be able to help you. Our military population is amazing. They deserve our respect and our service in the community. To our students, to the students here at Cal State San Marcos, if you see somebody that needs help, or you need a veteran that you recognize needs help, go up and ask that person if there's something you can do for them and connect them up to services. To the community partners and organizations, you're sometimes the first line of service and interaction, and you're essential to helping support veterans. And to all of my fellow veterans in attendance, we are here together for you. If you're struggling, don't try to do it alone. It's not weak to be seeking support. There's over 300 people in this room, and they're all here for you to try to help you. Before I sign off here, I want to let everybody know, to all the veterans who are out there struggling, or if you know somebody that's struggling, know that we love you, we honor you, and if you need help, we want to help you. So thank you very much. I'm going to introduce our next speaker here tonight. This is a great person, great man who's serving here. He served in the military, served in the Marine Corps, serving here at Cal State San Marcos, has done wonderful things for the state of California as well. Major General Jackson. He retired from the Air Force. Sorry, Major. All right. Are there any Marines in the room? All right, he retired from the United States Marine Corps in 2012 after more than 36 years of service. He's currently the interim director for the Veterans Service Center here at Cal State San Marcos, and is chairman, this is a big deal, he's the chairman of the university's foundation board of directors. Please welcome to the stage here, Major General Jackson.
That was a close one, huh? Hey, the first thing I want to do is I want to thank Mr. Felty here for making me very aware of something. I came here last year at an event for the military at the Veterans Center, and he made me aware for the very first time, even though you would think somebody that's associated with the Marine Corps for 44 years now would have known that we were losing 22 veterans every day to suicide. So in thanking him, I was trying to think of a good way to thank him. And he has a program where you got to do 22 push-ups to be a true member. So let me stop right here and give this Marine 22. Okay, now it's my rest period. You know, if you're 70 years old, you know you do that every day. You know, I'm not going to speak long tonight, but I will tell you that I've had an extraordinary journey in life. And I want to bring that up because truly, all of you who support our veterans in so many ways, whether it's through the arts or science or counseling, I have been the person who has been extremely rewarded in his life. And so sometimes, if you're extremely rewarded, you're not necessarily sympathetic or empathetic with those who are not so fortunate. You live your life with all of its rewards. I was born in the right year because by the time I reached maturity, the nation had changed. It was a time in the 60s when we were looking at things like voting rights and the Civil Rights Act. And to be young, gifted, and black, that was where it was at. And I was fortunate to step on the stage just at that right moment. And I had teachers and counselors, coaches who supported me, who lifted me up, who said, you should reap the reward. Others had paid a dear price for my opportunities, but I jumped on that train. And I had solid parenting. I had a dad, a master sergeant in the Army. I had 6 brothers and sisters. We were competitive, but we supported each other. I had a mother who was loving and caring, and she was there every day to support you, to help you with that homework project that you couldn't quite master. I had a high school counselor who took me by the neck and said, son, you're going to college. I had a football coach who kicked me in the butt, carried a rod around. When you didn't pay attention, you felt the rod. But he made me good enough to win a football scholarship to go to a major university. And I got my education with that scholarship. I elected to join the Marine Corps to make that my career. And I found it was indeed my calling. And the young men and women who I served with, they put me on their shoulders. They lifted me up. Every rank I got was on the shoulders of talented young men and women from the Marine Corps, the Navy, yes, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, yes, I had Coasties serve with me and lifted me up, and the Army indeed. I was born at a time when there was a philosophy that I could easily grasp. The words of Dr. Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi. They became my lights as I was on the shoulder of these young devil dogs.
All right.
And so easily, you can ignore the plight of others. And there's many, many of us who enjoy success, but we don't look back. We don't reach back and pull up others from their plight, because their mountain might be a little taller than ours. The deep crags of the climb up the mountain, the boulders, the cliffs, even the small pebble that they may trip on, they don't necessarily have the same support that Tony Jackson had throughout every moment of his life. So a few years ago, as I was about to retire, the president of this university asked me to come to lunch with her. And I came here while I was still in uniform as the commanding general of Marine Corps Installations West, which includes your Camp Pendleton, sir. And I had lunch with her. And I found out some of the wonderful programs and students and families supporting military veterans that this university has. And I became a member of the board of the foundation here, set up a scholarship for veterans, trying to reach back. At the same time, I really fell in love with this university community and its outreach to veterans. And so when I was asked to be the director of veteran services here on an interim basis, it was really an honor, another opportunity to serve the men and women who serve so wonderfully for me for 36 years, 7 months, and 1 day as a Marine officer. This is my opportunity to try to do something, to give them what I had throughout my life. And I understand that the education is important. And I appreciate everybody who mans a table here who comes to the aid of our veterans. It's a kind of a unique amount of stresses that we have in our lives and in our families' lives. I came home on Saturday to a son, 34 years old. He works at Camp Pendleton. He's never served in the military, but he was saddened. He had just come home from a funeral to a veteran who had committed suicide last week. And so the work that you do is critical. I am here today more as a student. I want to learn the power of a story so that I can do better at supporting our veterans as they weave through their paths and their lives. I thank you all for being here and being in support. Thank you, and God bless.
Well said. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Look forward to lunch later. Thank you again, Supervisor Desmond, as well as Major General Jackson. Now I would like to take this opportunity to recognize and thank several folks with us this evening. So please hold your round of applause or reaction until after I've announced everyone. First, we would like to thank our veteran storytellers, our keynote speaker, Stephen Sutherland, Paula Wald, Stephen Padilla, Jalitza Jolly Cardona, Michael Johnson, and Jeremy Stallnacker. Our panel moderator, Sarah Carell. All of our co-sponsors, from Cal State San Marcos, the College of Education, Health, and Human Services, Extended Learning, Veteran Services, the College of Humanities, Arts, Behavioral, and Social Sciences, the Athletics Department, Social Work, Sociology, and the Human Development Departments. Thank you. Thank you to our other co-sponsors from the community, Global Inspirational Speakers, the MCRD Command Museum Foundation, as well as the County of San Diego and Live Well San Diego, and SDG&E. Thank you. All of the resource providers here this evening, thank you all for manning or womaning or anything in between your booth. Thank you to all of our special guests and esteemed guests. Thank you, Supervisor Desmond, for acknowledging. And thank you for being here. As well as our forum coordinators, Marilyn Horta, Shayna Richardson, Sarah Carell, Shin Kuk, and myself. Thank you, and please join me in a round of applause for thanking all of them, as well as yourselves for being here tonight. As a reminder, please be respectful here tonight. When these stories are being presented and shared in as authentic and courageously and genuinely as possible in a vulnerable manner. Dr. Stevenson, are you here with Student Health and Counseling Services? If so, could you stand, please, and raise your hand? Thank you. Thank you. Should any of you need to speak with somebody here tonight or afterwards, please feel free to touch base with him and some of the advocates with him this evening. Thank you, Student Health and Counseling Services. Next up will be our panel, which is comprised of veteran storytellers with a moderation piece. I'm honored to have the privilege to share the stage with them. So please join me in a round of applause to welcome our veteran storytellers and panel moderator, Sarah Carell. Thank you. Sorry, we must have practiced, or not. Thank you guys for coming on up. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. I'll now hand it off to Sarah Carell. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you guys.
'22 is not just a number. It's not just a statistic. 22 are my brothers who just couldn't defeat it. 22 is today. 22 is tomorrow. 22 are the families that will feel the sorrow. 22 stressed. 22 of my sisters who pulled the trigger. Now it's 22 blessed. 22 of my family members who without hesitation took their lives by strangulation. 22 a day is 22 too many. 22 is survived by his 2 daughters, wife, and son because 22 couldn't put down that gun. 22 wrote a will to her next of kin because 22 lost that battle within. 22 because they felt like they had nobody to talk to, and I'm telling you now, 22, I've got you. 22, remove that barrel from your head because it's not just you who pays the price once you're dead. I was almost 22 on multiple occasions because I dealt with those same mood disorders and constant frustrations, and I thank God that I was too weak to pull that 5 pounds, and I thank God that I was strong enough to eject that round. So thank a veteran today because tomorrow may be their last, not because they died a coward, but because they struggle with their past.
Little did I know that a quick conversation I had 4 years ago with a man that sat next to me in my counseling class would lead to the power of a story. During that class, I shared with him about the mental health facility where I was doing my internship. He responded, "Oh, I was a full-time patient there." Before I could respond, class started. I was a bit shocked and left feeling very curious about this guy's story because he looked and acted perfectly healthy. The next week, he did a presentation for the class in which this man, Joe Hudak, shared that he was a Green Beret Special Forces operator, Delta Force medic veteran, which I later understood to be equivalent of a SEAL 6. Highly trained, highly intelligent, 11 tours as a shooter and a medic, who also received 2 bronze medals, among others. Yet even with all this strength, after he separated from the military, he attempted suicide multiple times and was in inpatient care for 18 months. Going back to school to become a counselor was part of his slow journey from trauma to healing. Joe almost became a statistic. According to the CDC, there are 25 attempts per completion, which means that Joe was one of nearly 500 veterans who daily attempt suicide to try to deal with their trauma. 20 plus of those 500 actually die trying. His story hit me hard. It was soul-crushing to me. How does this happen? Why does a guy like Joe, who finally has the time to relax and have peace and separate from the military honorably, end with the biggest fight for his life? As Joe told his story, I was connecting to my own story of losing my father to suicide 16 years ago, which is one of the driving reasons why I happened to be in that class with Joe to become a counselor. His story was difficult to hear, but it made me feel like we needed to do something, anything. There are too many people suffering with few solutions. We had to help in some way. I don't know how, but some way. It was through the story that Joe shared with me that powerfully connected us at a basic human level. The power of our stories and the willingness to be vulnerable deeply connected a decorated Special Forces veteran and a stay-at-home mom of 4. We both understood loss, grief, and the search to find a new normal. We both understood the anxiety and depression that creeps in. We both understood the desire to isolate and the shame and guilt that can be present. It was through these simple yet vulnerable life stories that we found the power of our stories can bring healing and connection to people from very different backgrounds. The power of a story is about connecting and healing. My name is Sarah Carell. I am the producer of The Power of a Story and co-founder of Veterans Crisis Outreach with William Felty. I am a civilian, I'm a wife of 29 years, and a mother of 4 boys. Tonight, my greatest hope will be that you will open your hearts to the stories that you will hear. Before I introduce our wonderful veteran storytellers, I would like to thank Stephen Sutherland. Thank you for that powerful poem. Thank you for being vulnerable. And I'd also like to share a little bit about Stephen. Stephen Sutherland is a United States Air Force veteran.
Who?
While in the military, he served his country as a military police officer. He deployed twice, once to the United Arab Emirates and the other to Kabul, Afghanistan, as a member of a personal security detail guarding a United States Army 3-star general, Kenneth Tovo. Steve's most memorable moments in the military are the times he spent with his friends on and off duty. Although Steve was in a combat zone in Afghanistan, he is truly grateful that he never had to experience combat. He sympathizes with those who have been through such moments that haunt them, but wants other veterans to know that you don't have to have experienced battle to come back with mental scars such as anxiety and depression. Stephen is currently a CSUSM Senior Business Admin student with an emphasis in marketing and a graduation date of May 2020. Okay, I would now like to introduce Paula Wold. Paula Wold is a 22-year retired Navy Chief Petty Officer. Paula is the first female in the Navy to be assigned to a combat flying billet. For 23 years, Paula has also been an addictions counselor, both active duty and in government services, and for the Veterans Administration. Paula was the lead instructor for the first inmates in California to be trained in the Offender Mentor Program as addiction counselors. Paula graduated with a master's degree in social work and still has a passion for working with service members and veterans. Welcome, Paula.
Thank you. Oh, my goodness. Well, okay, let's do this first. Thank you so much for letting me be here and tell my story. It's a privilege always to share about any of this, and particularly with people that care. So I'm going to give you a little history lesson first. When I graduated from high school, I wanted to join the Navy, and my mother would not hear of it. And then I got married, and then my husband wouldn't sign the paperwork to become a Navy spouse. So I got rid of both of them, and I did what I wanted to do. So, but I turned 30 in boot camp, and I turned 32 in aircrew school. So, like, who does that, right? Then I got it in my head that I wanted to be the first female to fly in combat. And this was just about the time when we knew it was going to happen. We just didn't know when, so I just pushed and pushed. But to put this in context, I need to tell you a little bit of Navy history. And so back in the day, well, it still happens, there's a convention in Vegas called Tailhook. And this, some of you went, ooh, you know, so there's people that are old enough here to know, like me. So what Tailhook is, it's the convention for the kinds of planes that land on carriers. So they have a tailhook, right? And so this particular year, the young men that were there lined up 2 lines, made a gauntlet, and there were only 3 females that were there that were in the pipeline to be tailhook flyers. And they ran these 3 women through the gauntlet, and they did anything they wanted to them. They touched them in any way they wanted to. They manipulated their bodies in any way they wanted to. And a few weeks after that, one of the females raised her hand and said, "This isn't okay," and so was born sexual harassment. I started flying about 6 months after that. And it was just recently said to me by one of my former COs. She goes, "Why did they send you alone? Why didn't they send a gaggle of you together?" It's like, why didn't they? Because now that they're putting women on submarines, they're going in droves. Smart idea. Being the only one wasn't that fun. So it was just months before I began flying, and I flew in an aircraft that had about 11 people on a crew, and I was the only female. That made me the fun vacuum. So kind of gone were the days of porn magazines and flying naked and talking about last night, all their antics and all the fraternal stuff that went on. No one wanted me there, right? So there was no inclusion. And that's why I joined the Navy, was to be part of something. And I was very, very isolated. There was a lot of sexism, which caused me to have to do it better, faster, and stronger than anybody else. And what that created then, when I got good at what I did, was just more isolation. So there was no winning. I was left alone in more foreign countries than you can even imagine. I remember walking in Bahrain with snipers up on the rooftop, and I'm all by myself. Not a real smart thing to do. While on deployment in Masera, Oman, I was walking out to the plane to pre-flight, had my tape box and my toolbox in my hands, and I dropped them on the deck, and I looked out in the desert, and I thought, if I start walking now, will I die first, or will they find me? Either way, it sounded better than getting back on the plane with those guys one more time. I didn't have much of a choice, though. I asked for help, and no one wanted to say anything because they don't want to make waves. First female, you know, they don't want to make this look bad. And so I finally had to kind of threaten that I was going to take it outside the squadron if they didn't take me off this crew. When I did get off the crew, then I was ridiculed and shamed for standing up for myself. There were consequences for asking for help, big time. It created more ostracizing and more shaming. And then while I was on deployment in Misawa, Japan, I dislocated my knee, getting ready to go on a flight. Again, not a lot of support in this. My crew never came to see me to see if I was doing okay, if I needed anything. I was left alone. What mostly nobody knew is I was going to physical therapy twice a day, every day, just so I could get up flying again. That's all I wanted to do, was get up flying again. And I went to the healing lights of the duty office, if anybody knows what that's all about. I wasn't allowed to go in the shop and work on the planes. I wasn't allowed to do anything. So after several months, and I was told I would never fly again, we got a new flight surgeon, and he put me through the ringer, but he gave me an upchit, and I was able to start flying again. Right about that time, my crew got what was called a good deal trip, and they were going to go to Australia. But they didn't take me. They took the guy they'd been flying with. So just more isolation and loneliness. So not too long after that deployment, I was ready to transfer out of the command to go to a new command. And to transfer out, you have to have a flight physical. You have to be in an up status. And I went to see the doc, and a physician's assistant found a tiny little split pea in my breast. Sent me to the surgeon. Surgeon said, no, we don't think it's anything. We'll just keep an eye on it. And nobody did. And 6 months later, it was a 2.5 centimeter tumor, almost stage 3, and it had spread to my lymph system. Now, a talk for another day. I can tell you what gave me cancer, and that was all those resentments that I was holding on to. It was bad. What you need to know then after that, 13 years later, I reoccurred, which that doesn't happen, right? But that's been 9 years ago, so the oncologists call me a freak of nature. Then I became a counselor, and that's when my life really changed. I became a Navy drug and alcohol counselor when I left the squadron, and I got connected up with people that cared about me. There was no more isolation. There was a community to belong with to now. I didn't feel scared and lonely anymore. And that's how I learned how to build resiliency. And that's why I'm still standing here today. I now am an assertive advocate for both my physical and mental health, and my passion is to help others do the same. People don't heal in isolation, they heal in community. So enough about me. Okay, now I'm going to tell you what I really want to tell you, because I'm a social worker, I'm a counselor, and I'm an instructor. So let me tell you a couple things. The demographic that I belong to, the 20 to 30-year-old, no, the 50 to 60-year-old veteran. Don't laugh, come on. The 50 to 60-year-old demographic is the highest rate of suicide among veterans. Someone in this audience put it to me recently this way: to talk about that stuff isn't sexy. We're not the combat vets. We're not the ones that were sexually assaulted. We're not the ones that most people think of when you hear 20-plus veterans a day commit suicide. And you know, with the younger folks, we think they have their whole lives ahead of them, right? With my generation, we just have the rest of our lives ahead of us. So there's less services for us that don't fit into those categories. We're the silent majority. And when someone like me is overlooked or told to suck it up because there's a greater need for others, that can be deadly. And sometimes we're our own worst enemies, because I've heard even some of us on this panel, including myself, say, I don't deserve it. Those people deserve it more. They're the ones that need the help. So when I look at that, I go, ours are not the stories that are told in the press. We're not the stories that are talked about on social media. And you gotta ask yourself, why not? Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Paula. Next, we have Stephen Padilla. Stephen Padilla retired from the U.S. Army, who served as a combat engineer with a deployment to Iraq looking for roadside bombs. Stephen has dealt with PTSD anxiety due to survivor's guilt and has gone through countless hours of prolonged exposure therapy to help him manage his PTSD. Since then, Stephen has advocated for veterans policies with IAVA, Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, and was invited to witness President Obama sign the Clay Hunt Save Act in 2015 at the White House. He would later oversee the Western region for IAVA, serving over half of IAVA's members. He has advocated both locally and nationally for veteran policies that affect veterans on a daily basis. Stephen has spoken at the request of Congress members about PTSD and has given a speech at SPAWAR about hidden disabilities. He has also done media, given advice on movies like Shia LaBeouf's Man Down, post-production. He has worked with the VA's Make the Connection program to talk about his experience in the hope that others would get help, and has recently been interviewed with StoryCorps. He is currently working with Headstrong as a representative in Southern California to aid in the growth of their program, and is currently attending National University to obtain his BS in organizational leadership. Stephen Padilla.
I decided to go for the digital age, so don't mind my screen. So thank you for everybody for giving us your time, and some of us your money. And here we go. During this process of writing this speech, I have come up with many versions to talk about my trauma during my time in Iraq. But I've come to the realization that as time that has gone by, my trauma has become less and less important to the success of my story and where I am. I may have struggled with alcohol inside and out of service, as well as PTS and survivor's guilt. But by far, one of the hardest things I had to deal with was being able to find my voice, who I am, and what my purpose was. This sentiment is not mine and mine alone. I hear this often from service members, and I know it creates great angst. The most difficult thing I had to deal with was the fact that I was retired out and due to an injury and was not able to continue being a soldier. This meant there were no more wars to fight, no more missions to complete, and no brethren to lean on. Getting out was a culture shock. I had to deal with suicidal ideations and even sat there with a pistol thinking it would be best for everyone that it just ended. But I made many promises to those that I love. Excuse me. Promises that I love that I would keep on fighting. So due to this support, I was able to muster up the courage to seek mental health and endure the long hours of reliving the trauma. I think I could have taken on the task by myself, but it would have taken a serious toll on me. So I'm extremely grateful that I have a loving wife that is lovingly blunt and brave enough to fight me to get help. Through all the support of my family and friends, I was struggling to find my identity and purpose. I've heard countless stories of World War II and Vietnam vets coming together and to promote one another. So my journey began to find my community. I was lucky enough to find multiple veterans organizations with different missions that allowed me to explore different avenues of service that aided in finding my purpose. I was able to work with several nonprofits that allowed me to advocate for veterans policy, that granted me the ability to fight for veterans issues both locally and nationally. It also allowed me to share my story and perspective with the masses. My story, trauma, or experience are not unique, but it was my hope that others would decide to share their experiences to build a bridge between the civilian and military divide, as well as bring unique issues that only an 18 years war could create. I found my voice, which is ever evolving, but in finding my voice, I found a community that needed me and I needed them. Through this community, I built upon my resiliency because not only do I help others, but I learn other ways to express my trauma and what came after. Immersing myself in the veteran and non-veteran community, I built upon the tools that allow me to cope and manage my stressors. There is a great quote by an Air Force veteran named Stephen Maraboli that can encapsulate this sentiment. Life doesn't get easier or more forgiving. We get stronger and more resilient. This quote is so applicable, especially to veterans, because those that are here today can attest that we have met obstacles, adversaries, and adversity that have knocked us down or almost put us out. But it is our strength, our bonds, and our ability to learn and grow that have allowed us to be here today. It is our ability to be resilient. With that said, I want everyone here today to know that I encourage you to tell your stories. Not because it's going to boost your ego or get you recognition, but it is that you don't know who you will touch or embolden that will give them the strength to take action. Telling your story may be scary, but it is important to take chances because with chances, you don't know where you might end up. The challenge only builds resilience and strengthens the human spirit. Finally, to my brothers and sisters, remember to train like you fight, fight like you train. We worked as a team. We are a community. We are stronger together, and we'll only get better. It only takes one good decision to set yourself on the right path. And sometimes that one good decision is to ask for help. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Our next veteran storyteller is Jalitza Cardona. She is a 29-year-old veteran of the United States Navy, and she likes to be called Jolly. She is currently working at the Coastal Interfaith Community Services, helping stabilize veterans who are in crisis and in need of supportive housing. She is the only child to her single mother, who had also served in the military for 18 years and was a correctional officer for another 18 years. Jolly has her BA in psychology and is pursuing a master's in the performance psychology. Not only does she practice self-care by seeing a therapist every other week, but she is also active at her local MROC Spartan gym, flipping tires and running through obstacle courses. She is a certified Vinyasa yoga instructor and loves to make others laugh and smile. Jolly?
I still experience natural hesitation to tell my story. I have a moment where I stare at the keyboard, wondering, how am I going to put all this in 5 minutes? And do I have the capacity to tell this story again? Then I remember it's not about me or about you. It's about all the individuals that we will meet, the females and males who have experienced similar traumas. After the event, my beliefs and my core values changed and are continuously changing. In the last 5 years, I have been blessed by the number of people that have added to my mental health, from therapists, community members, to complete strangers. But talking through the experience in therapy is one part of the whole picture. What I'm finding out today is what happens after. The quote-unquote, what happens now. Maybe as clinicians, we can become engrossed in just the event and not what makes a person healthy and resilient. Like having a healthy, thriving environment, being spiritually connected, having healthy relationships, and having a healthy professional life. All things I struggled with while enlisted. An example of the continuous change is between 2012 to 2017, I was at a point where I felt I was incapable of accepting other people's trust or empathy. To April of this year, I utilized the crisis line for the first time. I stand before you today recalling 2 major traumatic events in my life. Both traumas involving exploitation by a fellow soldier I trusted. In both cases, I suffered in silence, and in both cases ended with no retribution for what happened to me. After I was sexually assaulted and was sent to my command, I got tormented by my fellow shipmates when I desired to seek treatment. I wasn't part of the ship's mission anymore. They removed me from my commanding ship once I failed at a suicide attempt. The night I was admitted, I met a woman in the inpatient clinic that showered me with compassion, love, and a promise of one day feeling self-empowerment, characteristics that I had not seen in myself at that point. She is someone I will never forget because hours before I met her, I was being told by a fellow sailor that if I was going to die, to go do it somewhere else. Another part of the story that I quickly want to go over is about resilience. When my first traumatic event happened, I experienced a long list of characteristics. I disassociated from my body and feelings, and I ignored and avoided everything. The emotions I had experienced were pain, shame, and anger towards the world, but the majority of the feelings were anger and disgust towards myself. I couldn't see past my shame. After my second traumatic event happened in April, I felt a flood of emotions. My body physically ached and felt pain that was almost unbearable. I would not wish this type of pain on anyone. What I believe is the biggest takeaway from that experience is realizing the years of resiliency I had cultivated. Even with the flood of emotions, I felt deep down that I'd end up okay. My inner true self became my biggest cheerleader, whispering to me loving words of encouragement and care, something I didn't experience the first time. The tools that I had cultivated after the first traumatic event encouraged me to believe that this time would be different, that I would not go through healing alone. I became stronger from the pain experienced. I became a better and more resilient Jolly than I once was before. Even more rewarding is that I can take all these experiences that I have had and share it with others, standing strong like I'm doing with all of you today. Everything I have learned from this has filled me with more compassion, more empathy, more care, and unconditional love to myself and others. By being here today, I am refusing to suffer in silence, and I'm asking for all of you to do the same. I am looking forward to a world that is overcome by individuals who, after a traumatic event, no longer repeat the motto of stand back up and suck it up, but lead with compassion, with empathy, and with love. I strongly believe that this is what needs to change in this world, and if we are all willing to do this together, I say please, please, let us all do this together, and let us all, lastly, all refuse to stay in silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Jolly. Okay, our next veteran storyteller is Michael Johnson. Michael is a Marine Corps veteran who is from Los Angeles, California. He was an aviation mechanic while in the military. While in the Marines, he was stationed in Okinawa, Japan, where he played basketball in the Westpac tournament. He moved to San Diego 4 years ago and is a veteran peer navigator for a program named Courage to Call. The Courage to Call program is led by Mental Health Systems in collaborative partnership with 211 San Diego and Veterans Village of San Diego, the VVSD. The program provides guidance, information, and referral services, and also mental health services to veterans, active duty, reservists, National Guardsmen, and their families. Michael has a degree in history from the University of Southern California, and he once worked for eHarmony.com as a couples matching coordinator. As a youth, he was also a ball boy for the Los Angeles Lakers. He is married and has 2 children, a set of twins, a boy and a girl. Both are adults with successful careers. Michael Johnson.
Thank you for having me this day. In 1983, I was sent to Beirut, where a suicide bomber blew up a Marine Corps barracks, killing over 200 Marines. This event prepared me for my future. In 1985, I left the Marine Corps and I went home, where a month later, my mother passed away in my arms. A year later, my only brother was killed. He had 2 small children that I took custody of. So I'm going from a bachelor to a single father. It was a struggle, but I was able to put them both through college, and they both have successful careers. After that, things began to go downhill. I lost my job, I lost my apartment. In 2010, I finally got a job in Savannah, Georgia. I lived there for 3 years, and until my fiance, now my wife, decided she wanted to get married in Los Angeles. So, in 2013, I quit my job. Gave up my apartment, moved back home thinking I'll be able to find employment and a place to live. That didn't happen. For the next 2 years, I was homeless, living on the streets of Skid Row in Los Angeles, California. After being told no at every turn, even the VA told me that I didn't qualify for any of the programs because I didn't have any disabilities or substance abuse issues. I was even diagnosed with depression by the VA and was told, oh, once you get a job, it'll go away. At this point, I started to feel like, what's wrong with me? What have I done wrong in my life to be treated like this and not to get the assistance that I thought I deserved? I quickly learned that I need to do this on my own. In 2015, I moved to San Diego, and I got connected to the St. Vincent de Paul, where I lived in a shelter. While there, I got a job as a bus driver. I connected to the Supportive Services of Veterans Families program, SSVF, and they helped me with the move-in costs of an apartment in El Cajon, California. Later that year, I decided to get a different job. I got a job with 211 San Diego as a veteran peer specialist for a program called Courage to Call. And now, I'm a veteran peer navigator for the same program, but with mental health systems, helping other homeless veterans get their life back. Mental health systems services address behavioral health issues through a broad range of prevention, early intervention, integrated treatment, diversion, vocational programs that are culturally appropriate and strength-based. These programs serve children, adolescents, transition age youth, adults, older adults, homeless, veterans, and military families. I got married in 2016, and in 2019, on July 1st, we became homeowners in Lakeside, California. The one thing I want to say to everyone is, if you know a veteran or anyone out there who's suffering, encourage them. Let them know that the help is there and not to ever give up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, veteran storytellers. Every time I hear your story, I'm impacted all over again. So we're going to now move toward the panel discussion. I'm going to start with Stephen Sutherland. So Stephen, you capture the hopelessness and desperation so powerfully in your poem. Help us understand what is going through your mind at that point, and how did you find your way out?
I wrote the poem in 2014, and I kind of hit a dark spot when I was in the military. And what was going through my mind is that I kind of felt alone. I felt judged. But one thing I realized is that after going through the steps of depression and suicide, I realized how important it is to actually just share your story, for example, like this. And the purpose of it is to allow others to be able to come out of their darkness as well. For me, spiritually, God helped me a lot, and my wife, she definitely helped me out through some tough times. And one thing I want to pinpoint is that, you know, the devil works in the darkness, and so you can't heal what you don't reveal. So if you continue to let it foster inside of you without sharing it and getting it out there, then you're going to continue to suffer in silence. So one thing that's really helped me is being able to just talk about it and realize that it's okay to not be okay.
You can't heal what you can't heal what you don't reveal?
Correct.
Okay, that's really good. Okay. Thank you, Stephen. So it sounds like just being able to talk about things helped you connect with others, and your faith and your wife was very helpful for you.
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing. Michael, I heard you say that many times you couldn't get help because you weren't addicted or you didn't have major mental health issues. Looking back, is there anything you believe you could have done?
I should have and could have asked more questions. The biggest part of this is knowing the information that you need to get the assistance. That time I didn't know the information. I didn't know who to go to. I was going by what I was told by other veterans and what's some of the information that was given to me through the VA. Not all of that information is correct, so you have to do your research. There are a lot of organizations out there that will provide you that information. You just have to know who to call and who to get in contact with.
Okay. Thank you. So what I hear you saying is don't give up, just keep asking more questions. So the help is out there. It's just keep asking questions until you can find the right solution for you. Okay. Jolly. I can't imagine what it was like for you to be in the situation you were in. Such a raw, vulnerable time. You said you learned something new when you were re-traumatized. Elaborate on what you learned.
So after the first experience, I was fortunate enough to become more involved in a community of women. And through that, I learned a lot about meditation, mindfulness, yoga, because when I got out of the military, I had a lot of panic attacks and anxiety attacks. So once I was part of this community, I developed a lot of skills. And then also working with the military and also working in mental health and going to school, I learned a lot through, I was like a sponge. And when my second traumatic event happened, I instantly went into that type of training. It's kind of like in the military when we're training for, a fire or an emergency. Doing it so many times, drills after drills after drills is really important, because when it does come to that time when you do have that fire or that emergency, you can quickly respond. So after the first traumatic event, I had been able to kind of build my toolbox. And then the second time, or the second event happened, I instantly went to that toolbox. And I instantly utilized all those skills that I had cultivated throughout the years. Yoga was a huge, huge one, and then mindfulness and meditation, and then also therapy.
Okay, thank you so much. So what I heard from you is that you, after the first trauma, you were open and you were willing to go and learn.
Somewhat. It took me a while. It definitely took me a while. I had to really become vulnerable. I used to be angry, an angry Jolly. Not a lot of people believe that based on what they know of me today. But I used to throw things, get into fights, cuss people out. So it took years. It definitely took years, and just learning and trying and failing at relationships, and then trying again, and apologizing. So it took a while, but I was so lucky to meet a lot of patient individuals.
And again, I'm glad you did. And again, I hear willingness. You didn't give up. You were willing to explore, and that puts you here today. So, which we're all grateful for. Thank you. Okay, Stephen Padilla. Stephen, you talked a few months ago on the effects of PTSD on your marriage at the VA Mental Health Summit. That was powerful. I don't know if any of you heard that. He did a great job. So, what worked for you and what worked for your wife regarding living in the confusion?
The very basic answer is learning to communicate efficiently. Just really efficient. We were really bad communicators, which, even just taking out the garbage, or, are we doing this weekend, crisscrossing information, just not necessarily being effective communicators, which created a lot of anxiety and or issues. And me being in a heightened state of, just always on edge, it always ended up being a fight. So just becoming really effective at communicating, so we're not guessing what we mean or jumping to conclusions. We say what we mean and do it in a proper way so that we don't end up fighting. That's the only thing we did that was super successful. We can go to therapy on our own. We don't work well with therapy together because it doesn't allow us to have our own avenue for communication to figure ourselves out. So we just figured that therapy on our own and just being really good, effective communicators in our marriage has really allowed us to be successful.
Okay, great. So what I hear you saying is that you, again, were willing You were willing to go out and get the help you needed to learn how to communicate. And for you, it was better to go separately, it sounds like, in therapy.
Yeah, and it didn't hurt that her father was a Vietnam vet, so she had some schooling from it.
Ah, yes. That probably prepared her a little bit. So
Yes.
yeah. Thank you, Stephen. Okay, Paula. You are a seasoned drug and alcohol counselor with a lot of experience helping veterans and active service members deal with trauma. What do you want our audience to know about trauma? And what helps when people don't understand their own behavior, their own thoughts, and their own feelings?
So I think the one thing that I found was important for me to remember is that this needs to be normalized for folks, that anybody that's been through a traumatic situation, and it doesn't really matter what the trauma is, that they're not crazy like they think they are, that their behavior is normal, and they're having a normal reaction to a very abnormal situation, right? The other thing that is of the most critical importance is that you do your very best to help them deal with the guilt and shame of it, to take the shame out of it. Guilt's actually a pretty healthy emotion. Shame's a really deadly one, and that's the one that generally creates people, all the suicidal stuff. So what was always helpful for me to do is start with empathy and validation, first and foremost, above anything else, and to acknowledge that, sometimes we look at two different traumas and we try to judge them, that one's bigger than the other. It's all relative to the human that experiences it. It doesn't matter, I always said if we put a 20-year-old that's lost his grandfather and his girlfriend, and we put a 50-year-old that's maybe lost a parent and maybe a spouse and a divorce or lost a job, and you put those two together, and you say which one's worse, they're the same, because it's relative to the person. And so it's really about empathy and validation, and it's about normalizing their feelings.
Thank you. So I hear you talk about the normalizing of feelings and how so many times I think when we go through a trauma and we think, oh my gosh, I'm feeling a little crazy here, that to hear that no, you're not crazy, you are responding normally to an abnormal condition. So thank you. Thanks for that. So friends, I want to thank you so much for being so vulnerable and sharing your stories, answering questions. I am proud to call you my friends. Thank you so much. So my final thoughts for this portion is this is why we are here tonight. Our stories are powerful. Our stories connect us. I'd like to now introduce our keynote speaker for the evening, Jeremy Stallnecker. Jeremy Stallnecker is the executive director of the Mighty Oaks Foundation, which is dedicated to helping America's military warriors and their families who are suffering from the unseen wounds of combat. While growing up, Jeremy's only goal was to leave home and join the Marine Corps. This dream was finally realized with an active duty commission in 1999, which opened the door to serve as a Marine infantry officer during the opening days of the war in Iraq. 1 month after returning from Iraq, Jeremy entered full-time ministry and eventually accepted a senior pastor role. He later accepted a full-time position with Mighty Oaks Foundation, which brought together his ministry and military experience in a way that allows him to minister to hurting veterans, service members, and their families. Along with his wife and their 4 children, Jeremy works to reach the hurting by offering hope and a renewal of purpose. I'd like to welcome Jeremy Stallnecker.
Well, good evening. It is good to be with you all, and thank you for attending. I often think in forums like this, if the people who are so down on our country could be in a place like this, they would find encouragement. There are a lot of wonderful Americans across this country that really do care about what's happening here. And this room is full of folks like you who are like that. And thank you for that. That encourages me. I've learned a lot of things tonight, and I hope that you have as well. Tonight I also learned, and this is new to me, that there is more than one military branch. 43 years old, I thought the Marine Corps was all that there was. I guess apparently that's not the case. Also learned that those in other branches don't know the difference between a major and a major general, so I'm sorry for that. But I digress. Thank you for being here, and it's always fun to have these times together tonight. And if you're like me, you come to a time like this and you hear stories like these, and it really motivates you to want to do something. And I think that you probably came here this evening because you want to do something. You wanted to learn more and understand more, and this was maybe an on-ramp for you to do something. I think that times like this are vital because we have to have those moments in our life where kind of our paradigm shifts and we begin to understand the real issues at work. So many of us think we understand, but until we have real conversations and hear real stories, we don't really understand. I left the Marine Corps shortly after coming back from Iraq. We served in the opening days of the war, from securing the southern objective in the country of Iraq all the way to Baghdad, and then retrograding to Kuwait and coming home. About 30 days later, I was out of the Marine Corps and was serving at a local church in Oceanside, which you'd think would be a really good transition. It took me a while, but I learned that the infantry community in the Marine Corps and church staff meetings are not the same. I only had to get thrown out of like 3 of them before I learned that yelling at your coworkers is not okay in the church staff meeting. I was not a big deal, and I don't say this to insinuate that I thought I was a big deal, but I had been a part of invading a country and overthrowing a dictator, and now I was trying to get volunteers to clean the bathroom on Saturday night before church. This was a very frustrating life for me. I walked around saying things like they don't know who I am or what I've done or what I've been a part of, and all I wanted to do was go back. I took it out on my wife. I took it out on my kids. I took it out on my coworkers. I almost lost my job, which is not easy when you're working at a church. The fact that my wife stayed with me through our first year, or my first year back, is a testament to her grace and her love. The process for me of getting to a place where I had a stable foundation and I could actually move forward in a healthy way included not diminishing my service, but not looking back to my service anymore. I was so proud of what I had done. That's all I had ever wanted to do. I was so thankful for the opportunity. But in order for me to move forward, I had to stop looking over my shoulder and say, well, maybe I should go back. So I took comfort in the fact that I took young Marines to combat and brought them home. I came to the other side of that and I thought, well, I've done my job and that's all I can do. Now it's someone else's turn to do their job. And for 10 years, I didn't connect with the Marines that I had served with. 10 years later, we had a small reunion. There were just a handful of us, but I met some of the Marines that I had served with, and we spent a week together. I got to know those guys again, and that was the first time I had connected with them in 10 years. One night we were sitting around a fire in Colorado, and we were talking, and really I was listening, and I began understanding what had happened in the transpiring 10 years. I have this picture over my desk. It's a picture of my platoon in Baghdad at the Presidential Palace on the north side of the river in Baghdad. I've got this picture. I look at it. I'm proud of it because I brought those kids home. As we were sitting around the fire, I learned a few things. I learned that many of the young men in that picture had committed suicide. They'd taken their own lives. I heard about young men that rotated back to Iraq, and were engaged in the first Battle of Fallujah after I got out of the military. Some of those were killed in combat in Fallujah. Of marriages destroyed and homes broken and lives without hope and without purpose. One of those Marines that was sitting there, he looked at me and he said, for 10 years I've hated you. I have a lot of people that don't like me, but most of them know me. He said, for 10 years I hated you. I said, why would you hate me? He said, because you promised to take care of us. We came home and you got out and we went back to Iraq and you weren't there to take care of us. We had a great conversation. We really mended some fences, I think, and I learned so much. But what I learned more than anything was this, that if you have served, when you put the uniform back in the closet for the last time, that's not the end of your service. In fact, this problem that we're dealing with, the suicide epidemic and the broken homes and all of the things that we have to deal with, there are so many folks involved in trying to fix the problem. But really, where it needs to be fixed, kind of at ground zero, is when those who have served are willing to tell their stories and step out of their comfort zone and do what they can to help those who are coming up behind them. That's the thing that motivated me to kind of transition out of what I was doing and come into a place where I would serve in an organization like this one. Because I had to do something. It was now my responsibility. I thought I had walked away from it, but really I had just put it behind me. It was still my responsibility. It's why we wrote books. I've got some books on the back table back there where the sign is. Those are for you to take. Just go back and grab them. We write books on resiliency and PTSD and other things as a part of our organization. We give them away. 40,000 books we gave away last year. Why? Because it's that important that we do something. But the question on some of your hearts and minds may be this: well, what can I do? I have a story and then I'll sit down. I really believe that when we look at the issues related to military service, in order to solve these issues, we need to take a combined arms approach. If you haven't served in the military, that may not mean anything to you, but in the military, we talk about the combined arms approach to warfare. There needs to be those who are on the ground fighting as well as in the air and on the sea. We bring all of these things to bear on the enemy because it's when we're all working together, combined arms coming together, that we can defeat a stronger enemy. We can't fight everywhere at the same time. We put them in a dilemma and they have to decide where they're going to lose. I believe the approach to the veterans' issues is a combined arms approach. We were moving north toward Baghdad. Eventually we would get there on April 9th of 2003. We sat outside the city. The army had moved into the south side of the city the day before. If you remember the toppling of the Saddam statue, that was on April 9th, 2003. We had an objective. It was the other presidential palace. There's one near the airport. There's another one on the north side of the river, on the north side of the city. His two sons, Saddam's two sons, had homes there, and that was going to be our objective, was that palace grounds, 12 acres. We fought our way into the city just after midnight on the 10th of April. Over 100 casualties, a number killed, most just wounded. Medevacs flying all day and all night. 12 hours later, we secured the presidential palace to the point where the shooting finally stopped. We were exhausted, as you can imagine, having moved through the night and fought through the night and dealt with the casualties and all of the things that were going on that night. We finally set up machine gun positions at each one of the gates, and we had our ground secure. The interrogator translators we had with us, they started talking to some of the locals that lived there, and they found out that a counterattack was being planned across the street. There was a major street, then some buildings, and then another building behind those. That's where the counterattack was being planned. We were spent. But we were also a Marine infantry battalion, so we were ready. We were going to do what we had to do. We just didn't know what that was going to be. As we were trying to figure that out, I say we. I wasn't trying to figure out anything. I was going to do what I was told. But as those who made decisions tried to figure out what we would do next, one of our forward air controllers, a C-130 pilot, who was really not happy that he was hanging out with the infantry of the Marine Corps, the C-130 pilot, why am I here? But he got a hold of an aircraft that checked on station. It was an A-10 Warthog. If you haven't seen an A-10, it has a 30-millimeter cannon right in the middle of the frame. And it will unleash. It doesn't sound like a machine gun. It sounds like the roar of an engine. It's incredible. Piloted by an Air National Guard colonel. Somehow it came on station. I don't know how or why, but we were able to get a hold of it. Our forward air controller did. He got on the handset and he told him the situation. He said, we need some help down here. We've had a long night and things are getting worse. We need someone to help us out. And he talked him onto the target. We were very close, so he came in once without the cannon, a second time without the cannon, the third time he let that thing rip. It was a sound I will never forget. And it effectively ended the counterattack. Effectively. And then he was gone. You know what's crazy about that? If in life you call for help, you or others will call you weak. When we came back from Iraq, A lot of awards were handed out. 2 ribbons were given, one to the pilot of that aircraft and one to the forward air controller that keyed the handset and got him on target. They were heroes because they worked together to solve a problem that individually neither one of them could solve. Lives were saved that day because someone said, hey, I can't do it. We don't have the resources we need. We need help. Can you come down here and help us out? And they did. And many lives were saved, and many of us went home because of that action. So what's the answer to the problems that we're dealing with? It's a combined arms solution. It's understanding what is at stake. It's realizing that you can't do it on your own, nor should you try. But with everything you've heard tonight, just like in so many areas in life, it's all just information unless you do something with it. So the question in front of each one of you is, what are you going to do with what you've heard? Perhaps tonight you need to enlist in the fight. You need to say, it's time for me to do something. I'm going to figure out what that something is, and it may take a while to get there, but I'm going to do something. I'm going to enlist in the fight. I'm going to get involved in what's happening. Maybe for others, you've been in the fight, and you've been in the fight for a long time, and you just want to quit. Perhaps for you tonight, what you need to do is determine that you're going to continue in the fight. Listen to me, there are a lot of people who have been fighting this fight for a long time, and it's a thankless fight, by the way. Most of the people you reach out to help will never say thank you, and many of them will be upset because you're trying to help them. Ridiculous, but true. Maybe tonight the decision you need to make is to enlist, get involved for the first time. Maybe the decision you need to make is that you're going to continue in the fight. But check this out, there's a third category in here tonight. Maybe the thought of enlisting is overwhelming. I can't do it. Maybe you've been trying, but you just can't go on. Perhaps what you need to do tonight is key the handset and say, there's a fight going on down here. I've done my best, but I just can't do it on my own anymore. And I need help. Can you help me out? You know why people take their lives? Because they lose hope. You know what happens when you get on that handset, get on that radio, and realize there's someone on the other end that has the resources you need to get you out of whatever it is you're going through? You have hope. You know what's really impactful about this time together tonight? You're hearing stories of people who had to find the hope and move forward and are willing to share that with you. But beyond that, you can start at this end of the room and work your way all the way around. And you can understand that there are a lot of planes flying overhead with people ready on the trigger. But you got to key the handset and say, I need some help. The help is here. When you hear these stories, when you experience an event like this, you have to make a decision or it's all just information. So what about you? Do you need to enlist in the fight? Then enlist. Do you need to determine that you're going to stay in the fight? Don't quit. We need you. Are you at a place where you need to ask for help? This is the time, and this is the place to ask. What are you going to do?
Jeremy, thank you so much. That was powerful. So what I heard is we're stronger together, and lives are saved when we ask for help. I hope that we'll all participate. We'll all think about the ways, the strengths that we have. If your heart is moved, you only need to think about helping one person. Think about doing for one what you wish you could do for all of them. Again, thank you so much, Jeremy. One reason why I really wanted Jeremy to come tonight is because the Mighty Oaks Ranch has a great success rate in helping veterans. As you see tonight, you see Jeremy's passion and his understanding, being a vet himself. He really deeply understands people. He understands veterans. So they have a week-long camp for men and women, and out of 2,800 graduates who went in suicidal, they've had extremely low completions of people actually taking their lives. They have a tremendous impact on our veterans. Also, they work so much with marriages. 80% of combat vets, from what I understand, end in divorce. Their marriages end in divorce. And again, their success rate in really helping them in getting to a great direction in their marriages, almost all of them have been saved. So again, thank you so much, Jeremy. Thank you so much, storytellers, veteran storytellers. And I'll tell you, it melts my heart to see you all here, because I know that you are part of this conversation. I'd like to now hand the mic over to William Felty, my partner and co-founder in Veterans Crisis Outreach. This guy has such a big heart. He is so committed to being there for veterans. You probably see him in every meeting, everything that's going on, always trying to find solutions for our veterans. So I want to thank you. Thank you so much, William. You're awesome.
Once again, good evening, but not good night yet. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, veteran storytellers. Tonight and now, we'd like to open up the forum to audience question and answer. These stories that were shared are pretty heavy. So if any of you are feeling like you need to reach out, please do so. I heard that message very loud and clear tonight. For anyone with questions or comments, we invite you to line up behind one of the microphones in the rows. There's 4 of them. Direct your question or questions to the veteran storyteller or Sarah that you would like to direct that question or comment to. If you or someone you know has a story that might help others and or us, please get with us afterward and contact us at Veteran Crisis Outreach. Again, that's veteranscrisisoutreach@gmail.com. Lastly, we will wrap up the Q&A at 5 minutes till 8, which is not very long from now, with closing remarks. All right, do we have any questions? We do have a question, sir.
Hi, this is for Michael. My name is Richard. More and more on more and more street corners is usually a guy standing there with a cardboard sign. A lot of times it says, "Vet, I'm homeless, I'm hungry." I've been told to not give them money because that encourages them to stay there. I've been told to just keep moving on. And I know that there are places to help them, but I also know that most of them are in a place where they will not accept the help. So me getting out of the car and giving them your brochure or their brochure, to me, it doesn't seem appropriate at that time. So what do you tell us all about what we do on that next corner?
That's a good question. It really is. I've run across the same situation. I've given that individual my business card. Will they take it? Sometimes. Will they ever call? Maybe. I strongly suggest just giving them the brochure. Every time you see someone like that, give them the brochure. Give them a phone number. They may call, they may not. You can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But if you give him the information, he's going to sit there and look at that information and go, maybe let me call this number. He's going to stare at it. It may be today, it may be next week, it may be next month, it might even be next year. But sooner or later, he's going to call that phone number.
What's a good table for that phone number?
Courage to call. Jennifer.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
This is more of a rhetorical question. Is 22 Marine soldiers, sailors, or airmen were dying in combat every day today. That would be national news. The politicians would be in an uproar. Why is that not a fact now? We're still losing veterans. The bad guys are still getting a body count. It's just happening here. Why is that? I know it's rhetorical. Why is that not on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, in the papers every day that 22 vets are pulling the trigger on themselves? Why can't we get that out to the rest of the country? That's why I'm here tonight, to find resources for my friends. I've lost people that have become part of the 22. And so I just want to know, can we make that a question? Thank you.
It's not sexy.
Ma'am?
It's not sexy to talk about that stuff.
you go.
It's not
Well-
sensational.
We're still losing vets.
That's the problem.
We're still combat.
That's the problem.
Can I say something on that? Because you're exactly right. And I think we need to change our view a little bit. I think that awareness campaigns are very, very helpful because more people need to know that whatever the number is are taking their lives every day. People need to understand that. But this is why I believe that those in the communities, meaning the veterans community, the veterans community is a very small, very tight community. We need to take this responsibility very, very seriously. We can hope that the VA does the job and that other organizations do what they're supposed to, and we can support them, and we should cheerlead for them. But at a very fundamental level, it has to be us taking care of us, or the problem will not be solved. But you're right, it's a rhetorical question. Why not? No idea. What can we do about it? Exactly what you're doing and what many others are doing is connecting with those that we know.
This issue, if you will, this tragedy, is very complex. It didn't all just happen overnight, and we're not going to solve all the world's problems in one night. However, I like what you said, Jeremy. We got to start somewhere, and we have to start sometime. Why not now? Why not here? Right here in the front, and then we're going to go around.
Hi, my name's Mary. Thank you so much for coming this evening. This is a question for Paula. You spoke about tailhook. I remember tailhook. That was 1991. And then Jolly spoke about the incidents that were happening to her. I feel like tailhook was an opportunity for the Me Too. And I just am seeing this reoccur, but it's the same thing. They don't know what's happening in the military. I lived in Orange County, and I might as well have been from Mars. Desert Storm was happening, and my friends were all going skiing, and it just seemed so bizarre. But my question is this: do you see the similarity in tailhook, and why didn't the military do something more than that?
Military is brilliant at covering up things that aren't pretty to look at. There was a huge movement that happened with sexual harassment, and it swung a pendulum to the point where I couldn't look at somebody and go, your eyes look bluer today than they did yesterday. That would have been sexual harassment. And there is somewhat of a center now. There's a little bit more relaxed thing. It was a video that came out in, what was it? I don't know, about 10 years ago? About all these women that step forward. So it's constantly an awareness raising thing. It's constantly pushing it out into the public, because that's how drug and alcohol counseling was born. Vietnam vets were coming home, they were addicted to heroin, and they were being turned loose in Kansas. And the American public said, you cannot continue to do this to our culture. Take care of your problem before you turn them loose. And that's beginning to happen. We're still fighting the old boys network. So until that, thank you, until that starts to turn and there's more women that are willing to stand up and go, like this young lady right here, enough, then things will start to change. Thanks for your question.
We have time for the two gentlemen that are standing, remaining questions, so please.
Sure, my question is for anybody on the panel who wants to field it or multiple voices. In the last 10 years working in social services, it's been really heartening to see the discussion around suicide become less stigmatized through no small part of storytelling, the theme of tonight's presentation. I've noticed that members of the top brass of the military and the government have shifted from the suck it up mentality that we've been mentioning, increasingly more willing to give out the vulnerability to embolden people to ask for help. But then they cut our funding, and then they turn around and they move educational opportunities for political reasons elsewhere. So they are saying the right things now, but we still keep losing money. And those of us in social services know we have to fight and scrape just for ourselves to survive. So my question, I guess, for the panel is, can we who want to help veterans actually staunch the flood and not just put a Band-Aid on a shotgun wound if we don't engage in politics at this point? Thank you.
If you really want to affect those policies, because pretty much when we deal with the government and funding, it's stealing from Peter to pay Paul, essentially. So stealing from the social services to pay for something. So you have to get involved. I love the fact that we're all here sharing our stories. In the future, I hope hopefully more veterans share their stories, but there has to be policies behind it to make sure that people are taken care of. And your comment about the top brass being more empathetic, while that may be true, but realistically, if you boiled it down, and maybe you can attest, that when it comes to the line units, that doesn't fly. So when you're going to the combat units, it does not fly. You get ostracized and looked at differently. When I was going through it, I had to say I was going through marriage counseling because that made sense. And going to be seen for PTSD isn't the thing to do. So top brass and actual line companies are completely different. But get behind and change some policy.
I think a big, this is something to think about, because we could spend an hour and a half talking about this, but here's something to think about. In a world of limited financial resources, one of the solutions is for the government to acknowledge that there are 44,000 veterans nonprofits in the United States. 44,000. And yet often it is government programs, or government programming, or policies is probably a better word, that stand in the way of those who need help getting non-governmental help. And many of the folks who could get help and go back to work won't get the help that they need because they have to go to a clinical program, when there are many, many, many folks, I mean, represented in this room, that stand ready and willing to help. And then the resources that you're talking about would be available for those who need that specific type of help. So I think we really need to take a look at how we even mete out those resources and when we need to get out of the way of others who are going to do a good job of helping.
Well, I just heard a buzzer. I'm guessing it's 2000 or 8 o'clock p.m. for some of you. Do you want to ask your question? Yeah, you do? All right. It's on your heart, weighing heavy. Give it to us.
In most of your guys' stories, I believe you all shared that you dealt with some kind of depression, anxiety, some kind of mental illness. And I guess my question is, what do your number one piece of advice be for anyone struggling with any kind of mental illness?
One thing that I heard the other day, like when you hear in the military, it's just like be strong, like get over it. But what I've learned to do is to be strong enough to pick up the phone. There's been multiple times where I felt ashamed and that people don't want to actually help me, until I actually fell into a deep spiral at one point, and I did pick up the phone, and I called, and not only did that individual come to my job, because I was on my way to work when I had my breakdown, but he brought about 8 other friends with us, and while I was working, I was serving, they sat down at a table, and they got a meal. They didn't even have to say anything, but I knew that they were there for me. And so that's why I say, instead of just be strong, but just be strong enough to pick up the phone, and someone will be there for you.
Thank you, Stephen. And to add on to that, feelings, emotions, thoughts running between our ears upstairs, you could see them as waves crashing on the beach, right? They come and they go. They come and they go. and with various frequency and intensity, right? And someone who lives with emotional issues, if you will, mental challenges, they are going to feel these things probably for the rest of their life. The hope is that the intensity and the frequency subsides long enough for them to enjoy some of it, and or subsides completely and indefinitely. That's all the time we have for this evening, folks.
May I just make a very brief comment? I've been struggling with VA since 1975, and now my case is before the Appeals Board of the Veterans Administration. If the 44,000 nonprofits that are out there would kind of focus their energies and their strength in dealing with an ombudsman for the VA, for those persons like myself that are having a very difficult time fighting the bureaucracy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Great.
We're going to begin to wrap it up, and great job tonight. Can we get another round of applause for our panelists, our veteran storytellers, our moderator, Sarah Carell? Thank you, guys. Thank you so much, and gals. This will conclude our program. Please take 2 to 3 minutes and fill out our post-forum survey utilizing the QR code at the back of the room near the exits. We want to hear from you so that you may help us improve our efforts for next time. Also, you'll receive a follow-up email by attending the evening's events, and if you cannot do it tonight. Battle Buddy push-ups. Major General Jackson and I did 22 push-ups on stage, but I'm not done yet. I do 22 push-ups every day in order to remind myself to be there for our vets and their families, and I invite others to do them with me in order to encourage them to do the same. So after this tonight, after we fully conclude, I'm going to be doing those push-ups right over here. If you want to join me, come and join me, as well as many others. Today is day 1093. I've been doing them daily, so over 3 years. In order to get involved and learn how to be there for the military and veteran community, we hope that you got signed up for some volunteer opportunities and trainings with some of the various resource tables. We hope that you have heard something helpful, have a better understanding about military service, and will walk away with something helpful for you or someone else in your life. Next steps, we're going to continue to be there. Will you? Thank you. If you would like more information to bring these stories and method of learning to your group or organization and or to get involved, please get with us after and or contact us at veteranscrisisoutreach@gmail.com. Final thoughts. Thank you again to our storytellers, our hosts, and our sponsors, and our resource providers here this evening. And every one of you for attending. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Remember to be there for our military and veteran community, including their family members, because it takes a village to raise children of all ages. Whether it's lending a listening ear, helping someone around their home, giving someone a lift to an appointment, or inviting someone to hang out, that simple act of kindness can go a really long way for anyone, especially those just barely getting by. Thank you. Good night, and until next time, safe travels. Thank you.